Welcome everybody who is joining. We will get started in just a moment as people start to file in. And just for those people who are just getting in, we'll be starting in a minute or two after everybody gets into the webinar.
But while we're waiting, if you want to let us know where you're here from, that would be cool, or how old your kids are. Those are all good information for us.
Yeah,
If
go
you want
ahead
to
and
capture
type in
in the
the
chat.
chat and give us a sound check and all that other good stuff. Say hello.
And remember, when you type in the chat box, pull down to panelists and attendees, and that way everybody can see your comment. Otherwise, it's just going to come to us, and while we're talking, we may or may not see it.
And we're using two things. We're using a chat today, and we're also using a Q&A. And so we'll have time for Q&A at the end. So if you have an explicit question, you can type that in the Q&A. It's going to be harder for us to pull stuff out of the chat, but if you want to just say hi there or make a comment or give us a thumbs up there, that's a great place to do that.
And thanks for those of you starting to capture. We see Edmonds, Washington, and Walker, Louisiana, Minnesota, a counselor, Northern Virginia. So we've got the breadth of the country covered.
We got the heartland covered. I see a lot of heartland.
Minnesota. I see Central Texas.
Pennsylvania, there's some East Coast.
There we go.
Adoptive parent. Yeah, what we've learned in our communities, we have lots of foster parents, lots of adoptive parents.
And lots of single parents.
And lots of single parents. Yeah, I would say we're partnering, co-parenting with lots of people.
All right, Claudia, we're going to go ahead and get started. There's still people filing in, but I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name is Amy Thompson. I'm here with ADHD Online, and we're really excited for all of you to be joining us this evening for this webinar. We're going to be talking about shaping the parent's role in managing ADHD. And I'm going to take just a moment to quickly introduce our guests. We have Elaine Taylor-Klaus and Diane Dempster, and they are both the co-founders of Impact Parents. They're going to be sharing a little bit more about their organization and themselves during their talk. But our team at ADHD Online, we recently partnered with Impact Parents. So we're really excited to be able to share more information and education as people manage ADHD, both the diagnosis, treatment, and management of ADHD. And so we're thrilled to have both of them here tonight. They have a lot in common, which is why they make a wonderful team running this organization. Both Diane and Elaine are certified coaches as well as parent educators. They also have several years of experience managing complex challenges such as ADHD for their children. And so you're going to hear about their experiences and the guidance they have for you in the parent's role in managing ADHD. And so I'd like to turn it over to our guest tonight.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Amy.
It is great to be here. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for taking time out of your day or evening to join us. And Amy, let me check in with you. We've got about an hour together. We're going to try to do about 45 minutes of conversation of us kind of teaching, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. Is that correct?
Perfect. Yep. And just a reminder, you can put your questions in the Q&A section, and we've got folks here that'll be monitoring that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And so, and the other thing I want to say, because, you know, sometimes when we're talking about ADD, maybe there's some people in the audience who might also maybe have ADD like me. And so if you're capturing something in the chat, if it helps you stay engaged with the conversation, feel free to use the chat and engage with each other. Try not to take us down rabbit holes, but, you know, stay engaged. And if you have a question that you want us to address, capture that in the Q&A box. And with that, I'm going to start sharing the PowerPoint. Is that cool?
Yeah. I think you're going to jump us in, aren't you?
If you say so, yes. So these are some things you may hear around your house. Are you in the right place? If you hear someone in your house saying, "Stop being so hard on him. Can't you see he's struggling?"
Or if you see somebody saying, "Stop babying him. He needs to learn to do it by himself."
or maybe, yikes, I'm helping my kids more than I want to be. These are all the kinds of voices that we hear in our heads or from our partners or co-parents in families with complex kids, kids with ADHD and learning disabilities and other kinds of issues. And what we all know, and you all know if you're here, is that raising complex kids is different. What the traditional parenting paradigms say you need to do with kids doesn't always work with our complex kids.
And we use that term complex. And what we mean by complex is typically kids who struggle with life and learning. They may be kids with ADHD, they may be kids with anxiety, they may be kids with executive function challenges. But the whole construct here is that they're the kinds of kids that really don't quite, the typical methods of parenting don't work the same way. And we always say that if you have a complex kid, you probably know that. And
if you've tried everything the professionals told you to do and it's not working, you probably have a complex kid.
So a little bit about us. So I'm the mom in the picture on the top left. I am, I think in that picture, I'm the only one that does not have ADHD. I am one of those type A, get it done moms, and a recovering yelling mom who is blessed with two families, a previous family and a current family, full of lots of complex brains. And part of my story is that I spent a lot of my life as a mom being frustrated and irritated that I couldn't get the rest of my family to do what I thought they should be doing, and struggled an awful lot until I became a coach and learned some tools that I'll talk about in just a minute. Elaine, what about you?
So I'm the mom in the bottom picture, and that's my now ADHD family of 6, including my new fabulous daughter-in-law, who is in the middle of taking the ADHD online assessment. So we'll have that answer for sure soon. And like Diane, I'm the mom in a complex family. Unlike Diane, I also have these challenges myself. And when my kids were little, I didn't know that one and then the next and then the next was going to have ADD, kind of like dominoes. I just was lost and overwhelmed and stressed out. And I knew that my kids were struggling and I didn't know how to help them in the way that they really needed it. I was just talking to one of my kids about that today, about how hard it was in those early years before I really understood what was going on. And I often say when kids get diagnosed and they call and they say, my kid is diagnosed with ADHD or anxiety or autism, whatever, my answer is always congratulations, because now you know what you're dealing with and now you can do something about it. But it's really hard to do something about it when it's this void of things are struggling and we don't know why. So I too, like Diane, had complex kids, and my story changed when I discovered coaching. And when Diane and I met each other now over 10 years ago at the International Conference on ADHD, we realized that we had these parallel stories, that we both realized that coaching made a difference in our families. And it helped us become better parents to our complex kids. And what was most fascinating about it was that it worked for me with ADD and it worked for her without ADD. Yeah. And so that's when we knew we were really onto something, right? And so we joined forces and started what we thought at the time was just going to be a webinar. No, in those days it was a workshop.
Right? And 11 years later, we have an international online support system where we do training and coaching for parents of complex kids, which is what we were saying earlier. We started as Impact ADHD and we expanded that because we knew that number one, kids with ADHD have a lot of other struggles that they deal with. And also there are kids without an ADHD diagnosis that are struggling as well. And the work that we do supports their parents regardless of what the diagnosis is. Yeah. So this is a pretty picture of our families.
Right.
And this is what it looks like on the outside. On the inside,
it feels a little more like this to a lot of us.
It does feel a little more like that. Even on a good day, it feels like that. And so if you've got a complex kid or if you've got a brain that's complex yourself, you'll know that what we've found in our work is that there are 6 key challenge areas.
Well, before we get there, here's what I want to say about this picture, Diane, is that what I love about this picture, besides the fact that it's actually not my garage, though it could have been, is 2 things. One is that this captures what it can be like in our lives logistically, tactically, like just chaos, disorganized, very common to struggle with organization issues, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But it also captures, for those of us who have ADHD, sometimes what it can feel like to be in our brains, right?
Yeah.
This level of, I know it's in here somewhere, but I don't know how to find it. Or there's got to be an order to this chaos in there somewhere. I share this because I think it's really important for us as parents, particularly if you don't have ADHD yourself, to understand that it's difficult when you have ADHD because it can feel very chaotic inside, not just outside.
Well,
And
and
so
it's
part
funny,
of us are
Elaine.
trying to really manage that.
Well, and Kate somebody just posted that her house looks like this, but she knows where everything is, right?
Exactly.
So everybody's brain is a little bit different, and it's about knowing your brain and understanding what's going on and finding a way to optimize what's going on in your brain.
Right.
So there are now I can go. There's 6 key challenge areas we talk about in our work with parents that are really very universal. It's kind of surprising and kind of not. But the 6 areas are.
Well, we're going to go into them one at a time.
One at a time.
Is that okay?
Yep.
What I want to add to what you're saying before you do is that these are the 6 areas that when you have ADHD, in all likelihood, it's going to show up in all 6 of these areas. Every family who struggles with this issue, families struggle with more or less, but all of these issues, it doesn't just show up in one or the other, which is really commonly a common misunderstanding. Right.
So the first one is about organization. So this may be the way your kid's backpack looks. This may be about your garage and how your garage looks. This may be around your planning system for how you keep track of your calendar. There's lots of different components to organization.
And the second one is logistics. And this is often associated with the time of day. Maybe it's getting out of the door in the morning, or getting homework done in the afternoon, or getting to bed in the evening. It's the systems, or maybe lack thereof, that we use to help accomplish certain things in a day. And these first 3 areas are what we call tactical challenges. So organization, logistics,
and school or work, right? So that can be both getting work done in school. It can be managing your own workload around the house or in your job. There's some impact on getting the business done of life.
Right. And then we move to the emotional impact of all of these issues in our lives. The first that most of us are familiar with is emotional intensity. This may be kids who scream or melt down. It might sometimes be kids who hide or are super shy, but kids who feel really tensely, or maybe adults who feel really intensely.
Say maybe adults too, right?
and who really struggle with regulation, with regulating our emotional intensity.
The next thing it has an impact on is relationships. This could be your relationship with your co-parent. This could be your relationship with your kiddo that's strained. It could be that you've got 2 kids and their relationship is strained. There's all kinds of relationship dynamics that happen when some or several of you are struggling with attention and learning issues.
And it could also be teachers or coaches or aunts and uncles, all kinds of dynamics. And very similar to that, but kind of we think it's important to hone in, is there's also an impact on the parents and the family structure when somebody has ADHD in the family. There's, as parents, we start off with this vision of what we think parenting is going to be like, or our family life is going to be like. And, for most of us, it doesn't go as planned anyway. But when you add ADHD into the mix, there's a lot of work for us around sort of unpacking the frustration with it, letting go of the vision of what we thought it was going to be like, so that we can really meet our family and embrace what we've got. So really looking at, how does this impact me as a parent to have to be advocating more and supporting more and scaffolding more, is something that we think is really important for us to pay attention to as parents.
And again, that may be the case if you're an adult with ADHD or if you're an adult without ADHD. And what we find is, and this is where we started, with 6 core parenting styles. And apologies to the men in the room. Our next slide will have guys on it, but the first set was just female figures. But you may be a super mom, or you may feel maxed out, or you may feel lost. You might feel more like a fix-it person, Angry Ann. I was a combination of Sue the super mom and Angry Ann. I kind of vacillated between the 2. Elaine, which were yours?
I was Lost Lois and maxed out Maxine, but I was trying to be Sue the super mom.
Yeah.
right? What I didn't realize is what I needed to be was conscious Connie so I could do any of it. And, what I want to add is these are what we've gone through is all the 6 areas that ADHD impacts the family. And these parenting styles are what Diane and I began to notice is how parents tend to react.
Mhm.
And in an ideal day, we're conscious Connie and we're responding, but mostly we have a tendency to react. And so we started with these, as Diane said, and then over the years, we began to identify other ways that parents tend to react. And so now you see denying Dan and defensive Drew and nagging Nan and anxious Ava, right? All the different ways that we as parents have a tendency to react when things don't go the way that we expect them to go. And I'm
So,
curious if
yeah,
people
I'm
might want
curious. Like,
to
type in
answer
the
in the
chat.
chat. Where do you recognize yourself here? Are you fix-it Fran? Are you anxious Ava? Are you nagging Nan? You don't have to have the names for them. Do you have a tendency to get angry? Do you have a tendency to withdraw or to judge? Or, this is bootstraps Bill, demanding Randy. So where do you tend to show up? I see anxious Ann, maxed out Maxine, fix-it Fran, right? Beginning to just see how you tend to respond or react could actually be an access point to begin to shift how you react so that you can respond more like conscious Connie.
Got it. Everything but being conscious. Yeah. Well, and I think that that's the piece of it is that we have our good days, we have our challenging days, we have our ups and downs, and ultimately what we want to be doing is instead of reacting, we want to be responding and problem solving and helping our kids to develop those same skills of problem solving. Underneath all of this, what we want to share is that whatever your approach is really key and a huge help or challenge when it comes to raising your complex kids. It's not so much about your kids as it is about how you're responding that can really make a difference. And we want to empower you to know that you can make a difference and that being here and learning the information that you're learning tonight and over time is going to be a key part of helping you to really make some shifts like Elaine and I were able to when we became coaches to really support our kids in a very different way.
Well, what jumps out as I hear you say that, Diane, is what's really key is that the change starts with you, right? The change started with me. And that it took me a long time to realize. I spent a lot of time trying to quote, fix my kid or make it better, or get the medical treatment. One of my kids was saying to me today, I feel like we spent the first 10 years just going to doctors.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I stopped trying to fix it. And there were reasons to go to doctors, don't get me wrong. But when I really started shifting how I was dealing with it and I was approaching it, that gave us a whole different way to be together as a family to help them learn to support what they were dealing with. But here's the catch. Most parents do not know that they are part of treatment. And this took us, Diane and I have been working together, 5 years before we even understood that what we were doing was part of recommended treatment. We'll talk about it in a second, but it's called behavior therapy training. And most parents don't get this information for a lot of reasons. We did some research last summer and discovered that only about 30% of parents ever even hear from providers that behavior therapy training is recommended as part of their child's treatment.
Well, and behavior therapy training is not just about sending your child off to a therapist, although there are situations where that's appropriate and works really well. Behavior therapy training is actually training for parents and for educators to understand the challenges and shift perspective, to learn new skills, and to practice with guidance and community support. And this is important because it's not, as parents, we don't just need information. I can imagine those of you like in the group here today have spent hours and hours researching on the internet. What we want to tell you is it's not just about information. You need help and practice to take some of these skills and put them in place with your family.
So behavior therapy training is about getting the skills, practicing them, getting feedback, and doing it in community. And it's about changing the environment where your child's challenges occur at what's known as the point of performance.
Yeah.
Right? Where the problem is taking place is where you really want to begin to adapt the environment to help them be successful.
Well, and I heard a statistic, Elaine, that like something like 10% of change is about the information and 90% of it is practice. And that's huge because we spend all of our time, a lot of us spend all of our time researching and really struggle with how to put the information we learn into practice.
Yeah. So what we really want to introduce tonight is part of our approach to behavior therapy. And so behavior therapy can be done in a lot of different ways and by a lot of different philosophies or disciplines. The approach that we take is what we call a coach approach. We were trained in professional coaching skills. We're certified professional coaches. And so what we do in our work is we actually teach coaching skills to parents. We're not training parents to become coaches, but we're training them in skills that they can use to improve communication dynamics and to improve the way that they're having conversations with kids. Because ultimately what we're talking about here is transferring ownership to our kids. We want them to begin to learn how to regulate themselves and manage themselves. And it's an incremental process. It happens little bit at a time, handing the reins over one little bit at a time.
And through this process, their ownership is the key, right? It's just sort of the goal here is to help our kids to begin to take on ownership, taking those reins. We aren't going to throw the reins at them and say, here, go ahead, get it done. We're going to really help them to become more independent and help them to become owners and managers of their own challenges.
And so we do a lot of work with the parents in our communities. We have group coaching and training programs and private coaching and all of the different ways that we work with literally hundreds of parents. It's all about, on some level or another, helping identify where a kid is in terms of their ownership and how do we begin to move the needle just a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. And Samantha's asking how this looks with homeschooling, and it's every bit as powerful, in fact, probably more so in some ways for those of you who are schooling your kids, to begin to help them to take ownership of their education and to play a pivotal role in guiding their own education and owning it.
Well, and ownership leads us to the skills our kids need to become adults, whether they go to college, whether they don't go to college. What we're trying to do is to launch them as successfully as possible and help them to develop the skills. And some of the skills we want them to develop are resilience and leadership. And Elaine, go ahead and flip the slide here.
Well, I was just thinking probably the biggest thing is that we want them to learn is how to ask for and accept help, right? But this notion, I love this concept of onboarding. If you've ever worked in a professional environment, we take time to onboard our kids to onboard employees into a new company. And if we think about parenting as onboarding our kids to adulthood, it's just a very long onboarding process. But that's really what it is. It's getting them ready to take on the ownership. So as Diane said,
there's about 4 core things. So we've got fostering resilience. We've got inspiring our kids to overcome obstacles.
To see the possibility that they're capable of overcoming the obstacles. Not that they can't, but that they can learn to, right?
We want them to develop self-awareness and understanding. And as Elaine said earlier, we want them to learn to ask for and accept help. And this is one of the things that a lot of our kids really do struggle with for a lot of different reasons.
And part of it has to do, and we'll talk about this a little bit, but part of this has to do with our style of parenting and when we're foisting help on them as opposed to inviting them and letting them accept help. And it's a delicate dance. There's a lot of nuance in it. The work that we do, as I said, we call this the coach approach. And it's really designed to help parents shift the dynamic in the home, to shift the approach so that you're empowering your kids to take ownership of themselves and to see their own self-management as their job, not your job that you want them to achieve.
Well, and we have an entire model that we go through, and we're just going to give you a snapshot of it today. But this is designed to just show you that this is about change, and this is about focusing on change specific to the challenges of executive function, which is why you'll see the activate the brain and positivity and shifting expectations and systems and structures, which are our core foundational principles that we look at as we're helping parents make change.
So when we encourage parents to tackle a challenge that you're facing, and several of you have captured in the chat, and I'm sure we'll see more. If you're struggling with any particular issue with your kid, we always encourage you to start by taking aim. Get really clear on what's the change you want to see. And the more specific you can get, the better likelihood is of success, because it's really hard to take aim on mornings. But if you take aim on getting out of bed, or when the alarm goes off, or brushing teeth before getting dressed, you're much more likely to get a system in place that's going to work and find some success, and then success breeds more success.
So we're going to introduce a concept to you, which we call the 4 phases of empowerment. And this is about how you as a parent engage with your kiddo on this road to help them become increasingly more independent and empowered. And these are about the roles that you play, not the roles that your kids are playing. And the piece I want to also add as we kind of kick this off is that this isn't necessarily linear. There are going to be times that your kids are up and down, need you to be up and down in the different phases. You may be in phase 3 in one part of your kid's life, but you may be in phase 1 in another part of their life. And so this isn't a linear sort of thing. And it's not an age specific thing. It's not like magical when your kid hits 4th grade, you should be in phase 3. So a few caveats
Unlikely.
as we go through this. Yeah, I wish it was.
Highly unlikely.
But this is, again, it's this sort of 4 phases of your role as a parent. And what I would start with is the director role, Elaine. And I think
before you go there, can I just say, I want to stay in this conceptual place for just a second. A little while ago, we showed you the picture and talked about transferring the reins, right? Transferring ownership, passing the reins to our kids. The other metaphor we often use is this notion of passing the baton. We want our kids to take ownership of their lives. But in order to help them do it successfully, we need to do it one thing at a time, one little level of independence at a time, instead of trying to throw everything on them at once. And if you've ever had a kid who you've said, I want you to go upstairs, brush your teeth, get undressed, get in pajamas, pick out things to wear tomorrow, do this, do that, and then come back downstairs. And then they come back down and they say, what did you ask? That's because they're not ready for all of that independence yet. You still need to scaffold it while they say, okay, I can go upstairs and, brush teeth and get in pajamas and then come back, or whatever that is. But to really break it down for them incrementally so that they can be successful. So you want to go to the 4 phases.
Yes.
Let's
so
talk
the first
about
one
being
is
the
one that I think most of us are most familiar with, and that's the director. And the parent is in the leadership role. They're setting the pace. They're maybe even setting the plan and the agenda and saying, okay, this is what's going to get done. This is when it's going to get done. This is what you need to do next. Here's some ideas on how to make it work. So it's that position of not so much authority, but leadership, that the parent is moving the child forward through the work.
I was working with some parents recently. I've been doing a lot of work with parents of young adults. Some of you have older teens and young adults here. And one of the moms came back after learning this concept, and the next week she said, so I realize I've been in dictator mode. Let's see if we can just call it director mode. But what happens is,
so I think that at some
sometimes
point
it becomes,
Yeah, I was going to say at some point, at some age, our kids start seeing director as dictator. And so that's one of the things to pay attention to, is that, parents know what director feels like. And I think a lot of times we don't know what else to do, right? It's just sort of, our kids need help. And so we micromanage and we stay really involved and we hold on tight. And our kids at some age say, I don't want you to help anymore. And so we kind of drop the reins.
Usually about puberty.
Yeah, somewhere between 9 and 17, right? Depending on your kiddo. And our kids really aren't able to just kind of grab all the reins at once and hold on to them. This is a process, as we mentioned. We need to help our kids to begin to take the reins, rather than just saying, fine, if you don't want me to be in charge, you do it. And we kind of jump to a more of a checked out sort of role than anything else.
Well, and when we do, what happens is then they falter because they're not ready for it. And then we go back to director mode and say, see, I told you, you need me. And we justify our decision to come back into director mode. So director mode is the one we all start with. It's essential to start. And the goal is to begin to move into phase 2, to collaboration mode, as quickly as possible when our kids are ready for something. You may be in director mode in all things except for one, but if you can start to move into collaboration mode, that's when you're starting to engender a sense of ownership and agency. And this is really about transferring agency from us to our kids. And in phase one, it's our agenda that they get homework done. Phase two, we begin to be in a more collaborative place where we're sharing the agenda. We're doing a little more problem solving, or maybe we're doing some planning here with them. And we're allowing them to share the agenda with us instead of it just being our job that they get their homework done.
A couple of key tools at phase two are, one is asking lots of questions and inviting to participate and giving choice, right? It's just sort of, as our kids get older, they want to have more agency and more control over what's going on for them. In that place of collaboration, it might be something like, hey, what homework do you have to do today? Do you want to do it before or after dinner tonight? You know, it's just sort of giving them more space and time to choose can be a way to work with them to solve the problem instead of telling them what to do to solve the problem.
Yeah, I joke all the time. One of my kids is super hyperactive. And so her legs always bouncing. There's always something moving. So she used to love to do her homework at the dining room table, but not at the dining room table, as you might imagine. She loved to do her homework lying on the dining room table so her foot could bounce off the side. That was her thing. And I had another kid who loved to do their homework in a tree in the front yard. And we had some rules about that if there was two hands involved. But really helping them own it gave them a sense that it was their work to do and not mine. Then we move into phase three. And here's the thing. So we talked about phase one is we're in director mode. Phase two, we start to collaborate, we start to problem solve, we start to share the agenda. Once they start taking ownership of something, and whatever that some one thing is, then we want to try to move into support. And as a support, now we're supporting them in their agenda. And it may be one thing, it may be, maybe they're more independent and they're in high school and it's, you know, most of their high school, or maybe just supporting them in the agenda of taking the lead with one particular class or even one particular assignment. But the goal here is to be supportive of their agenda and to begin to ask questions like, what support do you need? How can I help you? Or maybe helping them identify what other resources they might have for help, because it may not be me the one that's helping them, but it might be a school guidance counselor or an executive function coach or somebody else they're working with. So, but the idea is in phase two, we're collaborating and inviting them to take the agenda. And then in phase three, they're really in the lead and we're in support role and helping them see that when you're in the lead, part of taking ownership is figuring out where your supports are and what supports you need, whether it's parents or someone else. What would you add, Di?
No, I think that a lot of parents are out there going, but my kid doesn't want help. My kid won't ask for help. And I think that's what's key in this is helping them to identify what their agenda is. And if you're identifying a problem that your child really wants to solve, their interest in getting support will be different than if it's something that may be more secretly your agenda than theirs.
Well, and if they feel like you're really allowing it to be their agenda, right? So if they don't feel controlled, and what happens particularly with older kids and teenagers is that if we've been in the director seat for too long or for very long, it may take a while for them to trust that we're really willing to let go and give them some ownership. And so we may dance back and forth and they may be a little reactive at first until they can trust that we're actually not coming in to take over.
Phase four is about championing. And if you're in the champion role, you're there to troubleshoot, you're there to celebrate, and your kiddo is really firmly in the lead. And so there may be, again, this isn't linear. So we aren't waiting for the day that they're you're magically championing in all aspects. But right now, your kid may be doing a good job of, getting their backpack packed in the morning. And so, you can be their champion and say, great job, good getting this stuff going. Let's get going out the door. It's just sort of, you can play that role for one aspect, even if it's not for everything.
This is where we want our kids to end up, right? What we want in our relationship with our kids is for us to be their trusted advisors, where they come to us, they're handling their life independently, and they come to us for sage advice when something's going on and they need it. And that vision is out there, I promise you, but it's way in the future. These kids, for kids with complex issues, their frontal lobe is not going to be fully fused till their mid to late 20s. And until then, there's always going to be some level of engagement and often some level of being in phase three and support, championing them in some areas, but maybe not all areas for a while, and that's okay. The goal is to build the trust enough so that when they are ready for it, that you are the trusted advisor that they're coming to, because they know that you're not going to come in and take over, that they can ask you for guidance without you forcing it on them. So these are the 4 phases. I want to reiterate, as Diane said a little while ago, these are the roles of the parent, not the child. It's not that my kid's in phase 4 or my kid's in phase 3. It's where is my child in terms of their independence on this particular issue? And where do they need me to be in relation to them? What do they need from me to help them move to the next level of independence?
Well,
And
what
the,
I would say is that, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Now, I was just going to say that the goal here is to constantly be thinking about what's that incremental next level of independence.
Right. Well, and again, it's just sort of, we understand 100% what the director looks like. We have this dream of the champion, but the majority of the work and the opportunity is in that phase 2 and phase 3 piece. And this is something that we work on more than anything else with parents, is really how to begin to collaborate in a different way. How do you get your child ready to ask for help? How to figure out what their agenda is? All of these components that are so key to being in that phase 2 and phase 3 space.
And I think that the majority of our time in parenting, when we're parenting consciously towards independence, and I think that's really what we're talking about, Diane, is what we're trying to do is give you a framework for parenting complex kids towards independence. And these are kids for whom independence is going to be a little harder to come by and be a little more effort and a little more work. The idea is that when we're parenting towards independence, we want to constantly be looking a little bit at a time at what's the next level of independence, not overwhelming them, but empowering them to see that they have the capacity, that they can begin to do more and more on their own. I was in conversation today with my 26-year-old young adult child, who's now an independent adult married. And we were talking about my role as medical support and how that changed when they became an adult and then got married, and that, you know, my role shifts as a parent, and that's up to me to recognize that what they need from me is to be in phase 4 and not necessarily come back to one of these earlier phases. And having an open conversation allows that to happen.
And again, it's about adjusting your approach to meet your kids where they are. And this may be where they are in the moment, where they are with a particular challenge, where they are with a particular situation. But it's about you figuring out, you know, where would you ideally like your child to be? Where do they need you to be? Where are you looking at all those different variables and making some adjustments to move towards a more independent and collaborative environment?
Well, and the other thing that comes up as I'm seeing this, Diane, we often say, meet them where they are and raise the bar from there. And I know that it's complicated, because oftentimes parents will say, but I don't want to lower my expectations. My kid's so bright, they're so intelligent, they're so smart. I don't want to lower the bar. And we're not suggesting that you lower the bar on their capacity. What we're saying is that if we meet them where they are and we lower it to where they are, then we can help them crest the next hurdle and the next hurdle. But if you set the bar so high that it's just out of reach for them, at some point, and we've watched this happen again and again, at some point the kid's going to stop trying, because they're just not going to believe that they can, and it's not worth it. No matter what they do, it's not good enough. So really setting them up for success by allowing them to have a success, to feel what that feels like, to build on that, and then move into the next level of independence, the next success, maybe can be really, really powerful. Anything you want to add, Deb?
No, I think that's great. And underneath all of this is that we want to hold a vision for and believe in our kids' future as a way to really set the stage and help bring them into their future. We talked about kind of all those skills that we want our kids to have. We talked about resiliency and overcoming obstacles and self-awareness. And part of this as a parent is you've got to believe that those things are possible. We're struggling with a lot of real things in our lives right now. And if we give up hope or we get frustrated, our kids are likely to do the same thing. And underneath what they need is they need that sense of hope, and we can do that for them. I know you always say, I'll believe in you until you get to the point where you can believe in yourself.
Yeah. Well, and here's what I want to add to that is we think this is really important. If you believe in your kids, they're likely to begin to believe in themselves, or at least see that it's possible. If you don't believe in them, they're definitely not likely to believe in themselves. So oftentimes what we see in our community and in our world is that when our kids have really intense challenges with executive function, we as parents begin to see what they can't do. And what we really want to invite you to begin to shift is to begin to see what they can do, even if it's just a little step, the next little step, to focus on what's possible for them, what and help them begin to see what's possible for themselves. As Diane said, what I used to say to my kids is, um, I believe in you, and I know it's hard for you to believe that in yourself right now, but I'm going to hold that belief for you until you're ready to believe it for yourself, because I know you can, even if you're not sure you can yet. Because I don't want them to feel like that now they're failing me by me believing in them.
Yeah.
I want to really hold a vision for them and help them begin to see what's possible for themselves. Because a lot of our kids really struggle. They've been directed and redirected and corrected from sun up to sundown for so many years that they find it hard to believe that they're capable. And so it's really important for us to create that place for them. And I see
Well,
Samantha
I
saying,
was going to say, Samantha was
go for it.
saying something early on about superpowers, right? It's just sort of, we want our kids to not just see their ADHD. If you've got a child with ADHD or anxiety, we don't want them to just see that as a challenge. We want them to be able to see the strengths in their brilliant, beautiful brains. And it's hard to do that when they're having a hard time fitting the mold, which is a lot of what happens with these kids.
Well, and the other thing, what Samantha you're saying here is she said, I believe in my children. I don't believe in my ability to champion them. I need help. And here's what I want to offer to you, Samantha, and to everybody listening, is that process of championing them is the end goal. And where you are right now is in a process of collaborating with them towards that. And so really being in conversation with them, really helping them feel capable and what's possible for them, and getting the support you need to be able to do that, right? Focus on the baby steps for them, but also focus on the baby steps for you as you move more and more towards helping them see what's possible for them. You're not supposed to know it all now. And that's really what we're here for. If anything else, what I think we want you to leave with tonight is to understand that your approach matters a lot, that with complex kids, they're struggling with the fundamentals sometimes of life and learning. And so our job is to see what they are capable of and help them see that, and then keep moving them forward just a little bit at a time. And incremental change over time becomes transformational. But you don't see it in those little incremental steps. You have to pull back to see the big picture of where they will move to.
So all of this material is found in a couple of key places. If you happen to be someone who enjoys reading, The Essential Guide to Raising Complex Kids with Anxiety, ADHD, and More is Elaine's most recent book, and you can get information on that at impactparents.com/guide. If you are interested in getting some behavior training for yourself, our behavior management training program for parents is called Sanity School, and you can find out more about that at impactparents.com/sanity.
And so everything we've taught tonight, what we wanted to do tonight was to just give you a taste, a sampling of the kinds of things that come up in Sanity School and in the Complex Kids Guide, the kinds of issues that we deal with from a coach approach to really help you see if you're a parent and you know that you make a difference, that there's something in the family dynamic where you know there's something that would benefit if you can make a shift, then this is the kind of work that can really support you in that process. So impactparents.com/guide is a free download with some additional information about the guide and a supplemental article chapter that didn't make it into the book. And impactparents.com/sanity will give you more information on Sanity School. And we would love to support. Somebody was asking in the chat, I'd love some help. We'd love to support people. We do it in lots of ways. Our website, impactparents.com, is free and available. We have a great newsletter. And we publish 3 pieces of content, 3 articles every week. So we really encourage you to join us and start getting more information, but begin to use that information. Part of what we're really proud of that we do is to help parents take information and then put it into practice. As Diane said earlier, information alone is not enough. It's what you do with the information that matters. And I know that Diane, my experience when my kids were little was I kept trying to do what the experts told me to do, but I didn't know how.
Oh, yeah.
And coaching really gave me a framework to understand, how do I have those conversations? How do I empower their independence without controlling them? So we're going to end with a wrap up today, which is how we end up all of our sessions, all of our training, all of our coaching, because as coaches, we want you to not just have the information from today, but to really begin to figure out, how do you want to apply it in your life?
So there's 4 questions that we ask it, and as Elaine said, at any of our group calls, or on Sanity School, in our private coaching clients with our clients. What did I focus on or pay most attention to today? So what caught your ear as we were talking tonight?
And it may be that you had to focus on one particular child or one particular family dynamic or yourself. Like what had your attention? And
What
then
is your clarity? What's your takeaway or aha? What's one aha that you had through
or
this
one
conversation
insight,
tonight?
one gem, whatever you want to call it. Like, what are you taking away from tonight? Please capture it in the chat. Help us sort of get a sense of what you're taking away.
The third one is a realistic action step. We want you to take this information and pick one thing to do from tonight.
If you
maybe
want
you're
to.
going to try to maybe you're going to try to look at those areas where you're directing, and figure out how to ask more questions, and invite your kids to collaborate in a different way, rather than kind of taking the lead as much.
So if you're a get it done type A mom, you can take an action step. And if you're an ADD mom and you just want to think about what you got from today and deepen your understanding, that's okay too. Whatever works for you. But capture in the chat, what are your insights? What are your takeaways? What action step might you want to commit to? And this last one's really key. If you do choose to commit to an action step, how do you want to set yourself up for success? And this is, I think, what differentiates the coach approach from so many other things. If you've ever had the experience, I'm sure nobody here has ever had this happen. Have you ever joined a gym and then didn't use it? You join the gym, but then in order to actually use it, you have to set yourself up for success. Maybe you have to buy shoes or get a workout partner or put it on your calendar, whatever it is. So when you make a commitment to action, we really want to encourage you to set yourself up for success with that action. What accountability do you want? What structure will help you be successful? What support might you seek to get help with it? Who do you want to talk to?
Yeah. So I'm going to read some of the ahas, Elaine. I need to make it more clear to my children that I believe in the things they can do, especially when they don't believe in themselves. Yeah. I need to accept instead of fix. I'm going to encourage my son to follow through on his tasks without my nagging him.
And you might ask him, how can he set himself up for success when he sets a task and commits to it? Just how important a parental approach is and how much a profound impact we have on our kids. Gail saying it was helpful to see the process broken down into phases.
I need to shift my focus to taking aim. Let's use our language, taking aim better.
Great.
Oh, so Katie's saying my state impacts all of it. I need to be regulated before moving forward and helping. Absolutely. We talked about being a recovering yelling mom earlier, right? It's just sort of, if you're getting triggered, you're not problem solving. You're just,
triggered.
Fixing and triggered, right?
Yeah. So I know we want to move into Q&A, Amy, so I'm going to respect the time. I know I want to watch it. We started a few minutes late, so I'm hoping we'll be able to go a couple minutes late. We do want to make an offer to everybody. If you go to impactparents.com/treatment, we created just recently, actually, a guide, a tip sheet on recommended treatment for children and teens with ADHD. And it gives you an overview of medical treatment, behavior treatment, how they're supposed to be combined. And it's a several page fact sheet to really give you the essential information that you need to know. So we really encourage you to take advantage of that. And as we said earlier, any other resources on our website, impactparents.com/treatment for the treatment handout, /guide for information about the book, and /sanity for information about Sanity School. And now I think we are ready to move to Q&A.
So if you haven't already, go ahead and type your questions in.
So Gary asked a question. I want to hit some of it. Where did ADHD come from? We were just looking at the wonderful slide when ADHD Online did a webinar for our community last week. Dr. Jitler shared this fabulous
Great
history
graphic.
of ADHD,
Love that.
which we loved. It's been around for 100 years, right? ADHD is not new. Our understanding of it has significantly improved in the last 20 years or so. Even since Diane and I have been working, it's dramatically changed. When we first started working with ADHD, emotionality was not considered part of ADHD. And now we all know that it's an essential part of the executive function component. As with a lot of conditions and things, as medical science has improved and brain science has improved so dramatically in the last few years, 20 years, I would say.
20 years. Yeah. We've learned more about the brain in the last 20 years than we have
in
any time before that, right?
I think what we experience is that it may or may not be happening more. It's that we understand it better. And so we're better able to see it. Kind of like autism was already there, was always there. It's not like it came out of nowhere, but our understanding of it and our awareness of it changed dramatically about 20 years ago.
Well, and then another quick response just to Gary. Gary was talking about the different parenting styles. This is our model for parenting styles. And so we haven't kind of taken it from anything official. It's just our perspective.
Well, we've taken it from coaching.
Yeah, we take it from what we see in terms of the typical parenting styles that show up when you're parenting a complex kid.
So one of the things we've been doing this for over a decade with each other, and we have talked to literally tens of thousands of parents over the years. And so what we try to do in our work is to capture what we know from the information and learn from expert advice and research, and then what we experience in real life. And then we've taken tools and skills from the world of professional coaching and from change management information in the workplace, and sort of mapped a model that we've seen work and that we have now been able to teach parents for a decade that's really effective. And we have, our own in-house research on the efficacy of it and what the change is. But the real focus, as I said, a lot of the parent training programs out there come out of the world of therapy, come from psychologists, and ours comes from the world of coaching, which in our world is a very empowerment-based modality. It's all about, here's where we are, where do we want to go, what do we need to do to get there, as opposed to, there's something broken that needs to be fixed. That's not a message that we want to hold. We recognize the value and the role that therapy plays because it's an essential part for a lot of our kids. And there's also a role for this coach approach for empowerment.
So Erin's asking a question about homework and turning in assignments in high school. And she's got a child who has medical challenge as well as ADHD. And so she's looking into independent study because she's struggling with some of the medical issues. And there's a lot of stuff going on. And Erin, what I would say is that there are so many components to turning in assignments. And if you think about executive function challenges and all of the things that it requires to stay on top of your work and know what's assigned and turn it in and follow up, all of those things can be challenges on a good day. And if you've got a kid with executive function issues like you do, and then you've got a kid with medical issues, which are probably very distracting and maybe even impacting their executive function, depending on how significant their swings are in blood sugar, it's really important to kind of make sure that you're tackling this from two perspectives. One is the medical management of it, and then the other is the understanding and the executive function focus and management. Elaine, what would you add?
No, I think that's great. Is the understand it's complex. The other thing I would say is I've worked with a number of parents of kids who have been on, if not medical leave, medical assistance, that to work with the school and school system to get the accommodations you need. In this last year, we've seen so much school refusal due to anxiety, and the school's really working with kids to modify expectations until they can get them back into sort of full functioning capacity. And so really ask for the help you need, and ask and ask again, right? You've got to advocate kindly, respectfully, but they really need you to advocate because the schools are a little overwhelmed and inundated.
And Erin, the two things were medical management and executive function management, because the executive function is what the ADHD challenge is
It's
underneath.
presenting. Yeah.
Presenting.
And diabetes is also going to lead to an executive function
Yeah,
impairment.
exactly.
So Mary Lou's asking, do we have any experience with therapeutic treatment centers, wilderness programs for kids with ADHD and their parents? I've done a lot of work with parents, particularly with kids coming out of wilderness programs or therapeutic treatment centers, to help acclimate the child back into the house. I've got 2 or 3 clients right now. Not all of our families have the extent of or intensity of those issues, but yeah, we've definitely got a lot of experience because a lot of kids need that extra layer of help, and then bringing them back into a home environment where we continue to empower them becomes really important.
So Joy's asking a question about emotion management with a kiddo who's 8, 9 years old, and the tool that she was using was counting to 10. And what I would say with kids that can be really helpful is doing something with them, right? It's just sort of, so instead of saying, why don't you count to 10? It can be, let's take a deep breath, let's take a sip of water, but it's something you do together. And so that the pressure is less on them and more on the environment, to try to calm the environment and to calm the situation down rather than just focusing the spotlight on them to try to calm down. What would you add in?
The other idea we talk about in our first book is called Parenting ADHD Now, and it's a book of strategies, easy intervention strategies. And we talk about creating a calming box. And a calming box is not necessarily a box, but when your child is not upset, key, right? Have a conversation and brainstorm what are some things that help you calm down when you get upset. And so it might, as Diane said, be drinking water. My kids used to build blocks and knock them down, scream into pillows, pound pillows, but come up with a list of 10 things that they could do. And so when they're getting upset, instead of saying calm down, because let's be honest, no child in the history of the planet has ever calmed down by being told to calm down, right? So instead of saying that, you can say, what do you want to use to help yourself calm down? And that's a very empowering way to approach them because it's giving them back a sense of control. And they may say, I can't. But so you're working on holding them accountable to using a system or structure instead of the result of calming down. Getting them to just begin to be willing to try to calm down is going to move you forward way faster, way farther for longer. That's a life skill as opposed to just calm down.
Yeah.
Well,
so Erin is asking, do we have specialized support for parents with ADHD too? Consistency can be hard. Absolutely. I think that one of the things I love about our work is that it works for parents who have ADHD. It works for parents who don't have ADHD. We have a lot of parents who have anxiety and are just overwhelmed and struggling. Consistency is hard. And I think figuring out
it's a 4-letter word. Let's be honest.
It's a 4-letter word. Well, and consistency means different things to different people. I mean, the piece here that I would leave you with about consistency is it's not about doing the same thing over and over again. It's about that willingness to continue to try different things and stay in a growth mindset, an experimenter mindset, because the reality is that the definition of what's going on here with your kiddo is it's going to be inconsistent. There are going to be times that things are going to be that are going to work. There's going to be times that they don't work. For you as an ADHD adult, there's going to be times that you can engage and be more consistent. There's going to be times it's going to be hard. So just know that, it's like they say the only thing that's constant is change.
Yes.
The only thing that's consistent is not being consistent.
Well, here's what I want to address the first part of what you asked, Erin, because you're asking, do we have specialized support for parents with ADHD too? And here's what I'll say is everything that we do is vetted by me, right? I have ADHD. I have learning disabilities. Neither of those were diagnosed until I was in my 40s. I have visual processing issues. And so everything we do is designed for all adults, including adults who have these issues ourselves as well. We want to make it usable. We want to make it practical. We want it to be accessible because we know that our audience is distracted, is busier than typical parents, doesn't have the time to waste. And so it's all designed for us to learn how to manage ourselves. And if that means managing our own ADD, I use our model, take aim, get curious. I use our model to manage my own ADD issues every single day. So sometimes we have parents in our group coaching who are taking aim on kids' issues, and sometimes they're taking aim on themselves, and that's fine. That's the goal here, is to help you get a handle on what you're doing The other thing I want to speak to, because I saw this early in the chat, is this question of how can you help your kids with ADD if you have ADD yourself? And I really want to take a stand for the best thing you can do to help your kids with ADD is to consciously start verbalizing your own management of your own ADD, to help them see that they're not alone, to help them see that it's not easy and that it takes a little bit of effort, and that you can figure it out and you're going to work with them and we're in this together. It's just really empowering for them to realize that this is not likely to go away and that they can learn to manage it just like you are, and that you haven't yet and you're not perfect, and that's okay, just like they are. Right.
Well, and if you happen to be an adult who tends to get triggered, the same thing is true with that, right? It's just sort of, if you're having a kid who's having a difficult time with emotion management, you can work with them to work on your emotion management. There's no limit to collaboration here, if you're struggling with the same sorts of things your kids are struggling with.
Yeah. There's some question about whether we believe that ADD is a result of lack of physical activity. The research is pretty solid. It's all brain based. I mean, it's incontrovertible evidence that what's happening in the brain is this thing that they terrible name ADHD. Could be worse. In the 60s it was called minimal brain dysfunction, so it's better than it was. But we know for sure that this is external. This exists. We know it happens in some percentage. There's varying degrees, somewhere between 5 and 11% or something, depends on who you ask. Could it be exacerbated by lack of physical activity? Absolutely. Could we be seeing more of it because kids who used to self-regulate or weren't so severe and for whom exercise was enough? It's possible. Everything's about degrees. It's all kind of in that realm of to what degree or other. But I don't think there is incontrovertible evidence that ADHD is a clear clinical neurobiological condition that impacts the brain and causes the range of executive function behaviors that we've been referencing.
Well,
and more.
And Elaine, I'm paying attention to our time, and I'm going to check in with Amy and Claudia about that. But I see some of you are saying, hey, I really do need some help. I think one of the things, definitely go to get the free tip sheet that we offered, impactparents.com/treatment. We also offer, if you're ready to get some help, but you're not sure what help might look like, we offer something called a sanity session, which is a quick call with Elaine or I to kind of really look at what's going on, and we can help you get connected to the right level of support that you need for where you're at right now. And you can get to that, Elaine, you want to type that in the chat at sanitysession.com if you're interested in scheduling time with one of us. But definitely get on our mailing list and connect into our community if you're interested in getting some support.
And Amy, I'm assuming you're going to come on and join us and help us close this out. I do want to add one more thing before, if I may, because Desiree's asked a question about some stigma and severe issues. One of the things that we've noticed that's really come to light in the pandemic has been more parents of young adults coming forward and asking for help, more parents of kids with risky behaviors, snarky attitudes, all kinds of things. We're beginning to see some of these behaviors more because we're just spending so much more time with our kids, I think, and there's so many other issues going on. So if you're concerned about those issues, and you do feel like there's a level of risky behavior that's elevating, I really encourage you to seek help. And if you want to start with a conversation with us and let us guide you, or start with your pediatrician or a therapist, really, if there are issues that you're addressing or seeing that are of concern, take action on it. Now's the time to ask questions and get help, because there are a lot of kids who are struggling right now.
Yeah.
Thank you, Amy. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to add, like you said, we're started a little bit late, so I think it's okay to go over. I really just want to say thank you to Elaine and Diane for all of this great information. Just a couple of logistics. The webinar is being recorded, and so for everyone who registered, you will get a copy of that. Although I do encourage you to make sure you sign up on Impact Parents and get their newsletter as well, because they're going to be continually sharing great information and also having their own webinars. So make sure you connect with them as well. Elaine or Diane, is there anything you'd like to share just in closing as we wind down?
I just want to thank everybody for being here, and not just the typical thank you for being here, but really thank you on behalf of your family and your kids, because your part, hopefully if you heard nothing else tonight, you heard just how much you were part of the solution to whatever you happen to be struggling with as a family. And getting the support that you've even gotten tonight, the ideas that you've gotten tonight can go a long way in terms of helping shift the dynamic and really help your kids to launch to more success.
You know, I was talking to a group of parents in a coaching group today, and what I said to them was, I don't know why you got the kids you got, and I don't know why they got the parents they got, but you got each other for a reason. And this is your journey. It's not your destination, but this is the journey you're on with them and they're on with you. And so, you know, we really honor that and honor, as Diane said, your being here, being conscious, involved parents on this journey with your kids. Parenting is not for the faint of heart. You know, it's this is effort, it's work, and it's commitment. And when you're conscious and engaged in how you want to be as a parent, remember the goal here is to be in relationship with your kids, not just in the short term, but in the long term. So really being conscious about how you want to be in relationship with them and how you want to help them learn to be in relationship with themselves. That's what it's all about. So you've got this. Keep going, keep engaging, because you make a difference.
Wonderful. Well, thank you to both of you again. And certainly, I want to reiterate what was already said. Thank you to everyone who took the time out to attend, as well as stay a few minutes over so they could touch on a few of the last questions that we had. I hope that everyone is motivated and encouraged by what you've heard tonight, and certainly have a wonderful, wonderful evening. And we hope to see some familiar names as we have more of these webinars. Thank you
Thanks
all.
for thanks for
Thanks so
hosting us,
much.
Amy.
Absolutely.